It's August of 2005, and it's my last weekend before I begin my commute to start going to college. I'm commuting from home. It's going to be an hour long, every day, one way, and little do I realize how much that will become just an endless part of my life going forward. But I'm with my friends up in Pennsylvania, and we have gone to a pool party at one of their houses. We're now heading over to the now defunct Chambersburg Mall, and I walk into a CD store and I only have enough money, let's say $18, to buy one CD, something new to listen to on the way of my drive to and from school. And the choice that I end up going with is Coheed and Cambria's In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3. It's an album that will end up changing everything for me. It will teach me how songwriting works, it will teach me to slow down, it'll teach me to stop being such an elitist metalhead where if it's not shreddy, it's not intricate and complex, it's not real music, it sucks. And it's the album that absolutely saved me as a musician. I have nothing but great memories for this, and I do not regret my choice at all that day. But what about the other album that I could have gone with? Well, I did end up buying it years later, and I went through a period where I didn't listen to it much. I recently rediscovered it, and I have thoughts. So debut albums, there's always talk about the sophomore slump. What if you never even get that far in your musical journey? First albums are a lot like first seasons of TV shows. Not a lot of time and money were thrown into their production, and it kinda shows, and it's really hard to just come right out of the gate with a fully formed, fully realized voice and vision. Not everything is, the kick inside, which is a debut album still so freaking good that it still blows my mind that a teenager wrote this, while that album itself was followed up by one of the worst sophomore slumps I've ever heard. So you gotta temper your expectations with debut albums down to individual songs, the real peaks. In other words, don't look so much for the Gravity Falls, look for the duets. To really overcome it, your songwriting has to be just on point. It has to really punch through whatever limitations you have with the production and the time and the rehearsal and your money. Going back to them again, the debut from Coheed, Second Stage Turbine Blade, really does an amazing job of this. There's a lot of repetition in ideas and rhythmic patterns. I think I talked about that in another video. But as a whole, there's a very unique sound that for 2002 was really against the grain of what rock music was doing in that scene. And it really came through when you hear them progress album to album and the production gets better and better. Something that even In Keeping Secrets didn't fully take advantage of until I'd say the third album. The Junior Varsity, they were local boys from where we are, College Park, Maryland. Wide-Eyed is an incredible piece that has a lot of technical virtuosity to it, but really great hooky stuff, so the complexity is balanced out really nicely, even if the limitations and the flatness of the production is still there. And then you have the one and dones who, for reasons that should be discussed elsewhere, make a masterpiece and then just disappear. Or Alexis on Fire's debut album, great album cover, and it just baffles me back and forth how it goes from really interesting, brilliant stuff and then just goes into conventional songwriting whenever the voice comes in. It's always teetering on the edge of invention. It's never quite sustaining its interesting ideas or bringing them together as a whole, as conventionality ultimately wins out. So building on top of that, you want to also show that there's really going to be a lot of room to grow. Gaslight Anthems, 59 Sound. Further Seems Forever, The Moon Is Down, and one of the greatest room to grow albums, Elvis Costello's debut, and then there are the albums where there really, really, really is room to grow. So wrapping back around to where I started, let's talk about, albums that I was completely wrong about for one reason or another. So here's a positive one. This classic, Transatlanticism, I hated this first time I heard it. I did a podcast with my brother years ago where we listened to this track for track, and I just tore it apart. I think the thing that I really disliked about it was that the drummer sounded like he was constantly at odds with the songwriting. He had a little more of a Beatles thing going on where it sounded like he wasn't really trying. And just so you know, I know where that comment is leading me.
And that's why I'm glad the Beatles broke up.
But let me finish. This is a positive thing. Coming back to it years later, I realized that sound was completely the point. It wasn't trying to overpower anything. It wasn't trying to. You've seen those videos online of the Beatles would sound like with quote-unquote good drumming. Well, that's what I had my come to Jesus moment about with this album, and I've never been more happy to be wrong about something. It's always a pleasure when I come back to something, because those second listens matter. So what was the other album? What was the other album that day that I could have bought besides In Keeping Secrets that could have possibly sent my musical journey on a completely different trajectory? Well, Atreyu's debut album, Suicide Notes and Butterfly Kisses. I did end up buying it a few years later because I was hearing Ain't Love Grand, Deanne the Arsonist, Someone Standing on My Chest. I was hearing these tunes all over MySpace and Pure Volume because they were the it sites of the scene at the time. Yeah, I know, I'm old. But I just remember I didn't actually own the album until well into college. And when I heard the tracks from this, I was just toting it as a masterpiece of this is what hardcore could sound like. This is what metalcore could sound like. This is really incredible stuff. And looking back on it now, it's really easy for me to at least see why I fell for it. There is tapping, there is harmonization of the guitars, there are breakdowns. The voices are whiny and overly earnest, but they were understandable, which was a big metric that I was using at the time to judge what good screaming vocals sound like, and I still do. So at first blush, it's everything that post-hardcore, metalcore, early 2000s sound was all about, but distilled and pure. But picking it up again a month ago and listening to it on my turntable, it's also toothless, safe, and ultimately completely harmless. Truth is, it sounds like exactly what a review on AllMusic said about it. It's a trend-chasing album. It is a distillation, but it's a distillation the way Simon Cowell would distill a sound. Ooh, that's an insult. I'm hearing that it really sounds like a cheaper dollar store version of Opposite of December by Poison the Well. And looking back on it now, the telltale signs of its stylistic ignorance are pretty obvious. The production overall is completely flat. The guitars have that grindy PV5150 sound that I still don't understand why that was so popular in the metal scene. The drums get the ride cymbal right in a lot of places, but it curiously neglects the China cymbal, which is a real staple of the sound of that time. Breakdowns rarely think to retard the tempo, which, curiously enough, the best song on the album actually gets right. And I still maintain, that's actually a really great song. So while I really ultimately didn't care where Atreyu would end up going, I think I dropped out once I heard The Curse for the first time. I'm just like, I'm done with this. This isn't for me anymore. But this is a fascinating relic for me of just a sign of how far I've come and how far I've grown, and I don't hate it. I don't want to get that point across. I do not hate this album. I just realized that I was not in a place to judge this thing as one of the greatest of all time, which if you've seen one of my earliest videos, you know that GOAT is a 4-letter word to me. So I might have some more thoughts on vinyl. We'll see where that goes next. So thanks for watching. Stick around, subscribe. Leave a comment about what albums you feel like you were wrong about, whether for good or for bad. I like both. I'm planning some things in the future. I'm working on expanding the channel. I already expanded my workstation here, and I'm hoping to maybe do a live event soon, my first live YouTube stream, so we'll see how that happens. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.